The glass conference room in our Lisbon headquarters felt like a fishbowl as Tavian Moreau adjusted his silk tie with fingers that had never known real work. 24 board members sat around the polished table, their faces grave. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tavian began, his voice carrying that practiced authority that had charmed investors for years. "We have uncovered significant financial irregularities." My pen froze over my notepad. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. The projector hummed to life, displaying spreadsheets highlighted in angry red. "After a thorough internal audit, we've discovered that approximately $4.3 million has been systematically stolen from company accounts over the past 16 months. 24 pairs of eyes turned toward me in perfect synchronization. I recognized the expressions cycling across their features: shock, disappointment, disgust. Board members I'd worked alongside for 7 years now looked at me like I was a stranger. The projector clicked to the next slide, showing my electronic signature on dozens of fraudulent authorizations. Tavian's cold eyes found mine across the table. Ephraim Locke has been quite clever, using his position as VP Finance to authorize these transfers through multiple shell companies. Security appeared at the doorway, as if summoned by magic. My legs wouldn't move. This couldn't be happening. "Take his credentials," Tavian instructed calmly. "Clear his office under supervision." As hands gripped my arms, I locked eyes with Tavian. The smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed him. A flicker of satisfaction, there and gone in an instant. Standing on the sidewalk outside our gleaming headquarters, personal items in a cardboard box like some corporate joke, I tried to think clearly through the shock. The acquisition. The Talon deal I'd questioned last week. The numbers that didn't add up. The urgent board meeting scheduled for tomorrow that I was suddenly uninvited to. My apartment felt foreign when I returned. I'd spent so little time there in recent months that dust had gathered on surfaces. The silence was deafening. My phone remained silent. No calls from colleagues questioning my innocence. No texts of support. I paced, trying to organize my thoughts. Then something caught my eye. A crumpled napkin from last week's lunch with our IT director, Rianose. On it, barely legible, were timestamps I'd written down. Transfer times that seemed odd, happening at 2:14 a.m. when the office was empty. Back at my small flat, I retrieved the external drive from inside a hollowed-out economics textbook. Not because I suspected fraud, but because discrepancies had nagged at me for months. I plugged it in and began cross-referencing the transactions Tavian had accused me of authorizing. The numbers stared back at me like cold facts. For $1,300,000 over 16 months. That's $268,750 per month, stolen systematically. 4 shell companies received the payments: Orpheus Holdings, Marlin Ventures, Sable Enterprises, and Kestrel Solutions. Each payment bore my electronic signature, but something was wrong. The authorization codes were subtly different from my personal code. Only 3 people had administrative access to create shadow authorizations: myself, Tavian, and Rianose. Someone with that level of access had created fake authorizations that looked identical at first glance. My heart raced as I printed everything. The signatures were mine, but the digital fingerprints were wrong. Tavian had been planning this for months, but he'd made one critical error. He thought I was too trusting to keep backup files. He thought I would go quietly. But growing up poor teaches you to document everything, because nobody believes you without proof. I needed to know which one of us 3 had created the fake codes, and I needed leverage. My phone rang, startling me in the silence. "Unknown number. Don't say my name," the voice whispered. I recognized Nadia Voss, my assistant for the past 4 years, calling from a burner phone. "They're monitoring everything," she continued. Tavian called an emergency meeting to fast-track the Talon vote. My blood ran cold. The acquisition would go through while I was disgraced and silenced. "Nadia, I need you to listen carefully. Rian didn't come home last night," she interrupted. "His wife called the office this morning, frantic. He was supposed to meet me after you left yesterday with some kind of proof. He never showed." Ice spread through my veins. This was bigger than simple fraud. "There's something else," Nadia whispered. I overheard Tavian on the phone. He mentioned something about making problems permanent if people start digging. The threat hung between us like poison. "Be careful, Ephraim. These people aren't who we thought they were." The line went dead. I sat motionless, mind racing through possibilities, each more dangerous than the last. If Rian had discovered something and disappeared, this wasn't just about framing me anymore. I tracked Rian to his modest house outside the city. His wife Petra answered the door with red-rimmed eyes. The police say he's probably just working late, but Rian always calls, she whispered. He's religious about checking in. She led me to his workshop in the converted garage. Row after row of labeled equipment, color-coded cables. Everything is meticulously organized. He keeps an air-gapped system for security testing, she explained, pointing to a computer in the corner, completely disconnected from any network. The machine was password protected. I thought about what mattered to him most. His daughter's names didn't work. His anniversary failed. Then I remembered he'd once mentioned his first computer, an Apple II he got for his 12th birthday. Apple II at 12 unlocked the system. Inside, I found a directory labeled Emergency Backup with dozens of encrypted files. Most required additional passwords, but one folder stood out. Talon evidence. My hands shook as I opened it. Screenshots of emails between Tavian and unknown recipients discussing the acquisition. The language was vague, but one exchange made my blood freeze. Concerns from finance becoming problematic. Handled before final approval. Permanent solution preferred. Then I found the video file dated yesterday afternoon. Rian's pale face appeared on screen, nervous and frightened. If you're watching this, I'm probably in trouble. I discovered Tavian using my security credentials to authorize fraudulent transactions under Ephraim's name. He's been setting him up for months. My heart pounded as Rian continued. The Talon acquisition is completely fake. The company's basically worthless. Their intellectual property doesn't exist, revenue numbers are fabricated, client lists are fake. Tavian and some board members are getting massive kickbacks through offshore accounts. He held up a small black device. I've downloaded server access logs showing who accessed our financial systems and when. It proves Ephraim couldn't have done this. Rian's expression darkened. I'm going to the office now to retrieve physical backup tapes. If something happens to me, check the Talon files. Everything's here. The video cut off abruptly. Petra watched from the doorway, tears streaming. He was trying to help you, wasn't he? I copied everything to my drive, hands shaking with rage and fear. Tavian had not only framed me, but silenced the one person who could prove my innocence. The board meeting was in 18 hours. I had evidence, but no way to present it without walking into a trap. I needed someone inside that boardroom who would listen. Henrik Salas, the board chairman who'd recruited me 7 years ago, had one predictable habit. Every morning at 5:30, he swam laps at an exclusive club before heading to the office. The service entrance was propped open by cleaning staff taking out trash. I slipped inside, navigating corridors I'd glimpsed during corporate events. The pool area was empty except for the rhythmic splash of a solitary swimmer. Henrik always swam exactly 20 laps, then showered and dressed. I waited in the locker area, counting minutes. At precisely 5:55, the splashing stopped. Henrik emerged from the pool, gray-haired damp, reaching for his towel. He froze when he saw me. Ephraim, he whispered, glancing around nervously. What are you doing here? The police are looking for you. I have 5 minutes to show you why I'm innocent, I said, holding out a flash drive. Everything's there. Proof that Tavian and other board members are stealing millions through the Talon acquisition. Evidence that my signature was forged. Henrik stared at the drive. These are serious accusations. In 3 hours, you'll vote on that acquisition. Before you do, you need to see this. His expression gave nothing away. I can't promise anything, he said, slipping the drive into his pocket. After the meeting, then I'll turn this over to authorities. That's all I ask. A fair look at the evidence. I called my old college mate, Dalia Mbeki, who now ran an independent newsroom in Cape Town. I need your help, I said without preamble. And I need you to believe me when I tell you I didn't steal $4.3 million. Dalia didn't hesitate. Whatever you need. But first, tell me everything. As I explained the situation, she took notes. So Tavian framed you to stop you from blocking this fake acquisition? That's the short version. The Talon Company's financials are completely fabricated. Someone's pushing this deal through knowing it's worthless, pocketing massive kickbacks. I have sources in offshore banking, Dalia said. Give me the shell company names, and I'll trace the money flows. Within hours, she called back with disturbing news. I found an intermediary law firm routing funds through 4 different shell accounts. The money trail leads through 3 jurisdictions, but there's a pattern. All payments flow back to accounts connected to your company's senior leadership. How many people are involved? At least 7 that I can identify. This isn't just Tavian. It's a coordinated network. My stomach dropped. The conspiracy was bigger than I'd imagined. But Dahlia's investigation gave me hope. For the first time in 48 hours, I wasn't fighting alone. Getting back into Aeronova required creativity. I approached the service entrance during the morning shift change. Mira from the mail room was taking a cigarette break by the loading dock. She was startled when she recognized me. "Mr. Locke, they said you stole money." "I don't believe it." "Mira, I need your help. People could get hurt if I don't get inside." She hesitated, glancing around nervously. "I could lose my job." "I'm trying to save the company," I said simply. "Please." Something in my expression convinced her. She stubbed out her cigarette and held the door open. "The security cameras," she warned. "I know where they are," I assured her. Inside, I navigated service corridors I'd memorized during a security review last year. The executive floor would be crawling with security, but the server room was accessed through a separate elevator requiring special clearance. I texted Nadia, "Need your badge. Emergency." Her reply came immediately. "Service stairwell, 5 minutes." They moved the board meeting up. "Voting starts in 2 hours." My heart raced. Tavian was accelerating his timeline, probably suspecting I might cause trouble. The service stairwell was deserted. Nadia appeared, looking terrified but determined. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, handing me her access badge. "They're saying you threatened Henrik, that you're dangerous." Using Nadia's badge, I took the service elevator to sublevel 3. The server room was a fortified glass enclosure containing rows of humming machines. The outer door accepted Nadia's credentials, but the inner cage required IT-level access. I approached the security panel, mind racing. 3 attempts before lockout. I tried Rian's anniversary date. Access denied. His daughter's birthdays. Access denied. 1 attempt left. Then I remembered his workshop whiteboard with April 15th circled in red. His anniversary with Petra. Anniversary 15 April, the lock clicked open. Inside the cage, cooling fans created a steady white noise. I navigated narrow aisles searching for backup storage systems. In the farthest corner, a maintenance panel stood slightly ajar. Behind it, a crawl space housed additional cooling infrastructure. I pulled it open wider. Rian lay crumpled inside, blood matted in his hair, face ashen. For a horrible moment, I thought he was dead. Then I saw his chest rise and fall. "Rian," I whispered, dropping beside him. "Wake up." His eyelids fluttered. "Ephraim," he croaked. "How did you find me?" "Your wife was worried." "Save your strength." He gestured weakly toward a small black case partially hidden beneath his body. "Backup tapes. Proves everything. You're a hero, Rian. Now we need to get you help." Rian was barely conscious, leaning heavily against me. "Can't walk well," he admitted. "Been drifting in and out. Dizzy. Who did this to you?" His expression darkened. Tavian found me retrieving the tapes. When he saw what I had, he just snapped. "Hit me with something metal. Thought I was dead, I guess." I helped him examine the black case. The back panel revealed a small red button labeled Emergency Data Broadcast. "What does this do?" "Insurance policy," Rian whispered. "Catastrophic security breach protocol. Transmits critical server data to backup locations, compliance team, board members. Can't be stopped once triggered." Voices echoed from the corridor outside. "Check every level. He has to be in the building somewhere." Tavian's voice, and he wasn't alone. We were trapped. The server room had only one exit. "It's now or never," I said. Rian nodded weakly. I pressed the button. A small light blinked green, then steady red. Data was flowing through fiber optic cables to recipients throughout the company. Phones started chiming. First Tavian's, then the security guards, then others. Multiple notifications arriving simultaneously. "What the hell?" Tavian's voice carried through the door. "No, no, no." The server room door burst open. Henrik stood there, flanked by 2 police officers. "Tavian Moreau, you're under arrest for financial fraud, assault, and attempted murder." Tavian backed away from the officers, his usual composure cracking. "This is absurd. I'm the victim here." "She's the one who—" "We have the evidence, Tavian," Henrik said quietly, holding up his phone. "All of it." The The server logs, the fake authorizations, the offshore accounts. One officer approached with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. But Tavian wasn't finished. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket, pulling out a small device with a single red button. Remote deletion trigger, Rian gasped beside me. Master override for the servers. Drop it now. An officer commanded, weapon drawn. Tavian's thumb hovered over the button, his face twisted with desperation. Without the server data, it's just his word against mine. I still have board members who'll back my story. It's too late, Tavian, I said, supporting Rian as we emerged from our hiding spot. The emergency broadcast already sent everything. The board has it. The police have it. Compliance has it. Your co-conspirators are probably getting arrested right now. Tavian's eyes locked with mine, hatred burning in them. For a moment, I thought he might press the button anyway, just for spite. Instead, he laughed, a hollow, broken sound that echoed off the server room walls. You have no idea what you've done, he whispered. None of you understand what's coming. He dropped the device and raised his hands. Within hours, the story exploded across financial media. Biotech CEO arrested in $4.3 million fraud scheme. Executive framed colleague to hide massive embezzlement. My name was cleared publicly, but the victory felt hollow. Rian was hospitalized with a severe concussion, and the investigation was just beginning. Henrik called me that evening. The board has voted to suspend the Talon acquisition pending investigation. Your position is restored, effective immediately. What about the other board members involved? 3 have resigned. The authorities are investigating their offshore accounts. But I knew this was bigger than 3 board members. Dahlia called with more disturbing news. The money trail goes deeper than we thought. That intermediary law firm has connections to pharmaceutical companies across Europe. We're talking about a network worth hundreds of millions. How many people? At least 20 executives across 6 companies. Tavian wasn't the mastermind. He was middle management in a massive fraud operation. My lawyer arrived with additional evidence. We've traced $1.55 million to a Kestrel account connected to a powerful regional pharmaceutical lobby. These people have been inflating drug prices and stealing research for years. The scope was staggering. What started as personal revenge had uncovered an industry-wide conspiracy. But I wasn't satisfied with just clearing my name. These people had nearly destroyed me, hurt Rian, and stolen from countless patients who needed real treatments. I refused the comfortable narrative that I was simply a victim who'd been vindicated. In my first press statement, I made it clear this was just the beginning. Today's arrests represent only the tip of the iceberg. We've uncovered evidence of systematic fraud affecting multiple pharmaceutical companies across Europe. Patients have been deceived, shareholders robbed, and medical research corrupted. The media attention was intense, but I used it strategically. Every interview focused on the broader network, not my personal vindication. Behind the scenes, I coordinated with Dahlia's newsroom and international investigators to map the full conspiracy. 3 days after Tavian's arrest, my lawyer brought disturbing news. One of the arrested board members, Wilhelm Cross, made an interesting comment during interrogation. He said you should watch your family, because some problems have long memories. The threat was subtle but clear. These people had resources and connections that extended far beyond Aeronova. But instead of intimidating me, it confirmed what I already suspected. This network was powerful enough to reach across borders, which meant they were also vulnerable to coordinated international pressure. I started making calls to regulatory agencies in 3 countries. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd show them what real pressure looked like. The game was just beginning, and I intended to win it completely. I leveraged Tavian's arrest to pressure smaller players in the network. Through my lawyer, I offered reduced criminal exposure in exchange for complete cooperation. Names, documents, financial records, everything. The first to crack was a junior board member named Klaus Brennan. Facing 20 years in prison, he provided detailed records of bribery payments to regulators in Estonia and Poland. It started small, he admitted during his proffer session. Tavian said we were just expediting approvals for life-saving drugs. By the time I realized the research was fabricated, I was already implicated. His cooperation led to 3 more arrests, including a senior regulator who'd been taking monthly payments to fast-track fake clinical trials. Each arrest provided new evidence, and each piece of evidence implicated more people. The investigation spread like wildfire across the pharmaceutical industry. But I wasn't interested in just collecting scalps. I wanted structural change. Working with Dahlia's investigative team, we documented how the network operated. Shell companies hiding kickbacks, research labs falsifying data, regulators looking the other way. The pattern was consistent across 3 countries and dozens of companies. This wasn't random corruption. It was systematic theft from patients who trusted these medications with their lives. The scope of betrayal was staggering, and I was determined to expose every single person involved. Dahlia's investigation uncovered the most heartbreaking aspect of the conspiracy. The stolen intellectual property from Talon belonged to Dr. Anna Kask, a brilliant researcher who'd spent 5 years developing treatments for rare childhood diseases. She never got a penny, Dahlia reported from Estonia. When she tried to file complaints about the theft, she received anonymous threats. Her funding was mysteriously cut. She was forced to abandon her research. I flew to Tallinn to meet Dr. Kask personally. Her small laboratory was barely functional, equipment outdated, staff reduced to 2 overworked assistants. But her eyes burned with the same determination I felt. They didn't just steal my work, she said quietly. They corrupted it. My treatments could have helped children, but they turned them into fake products sold for profit while real patients suffered. The pharmaceutical network had not only stolen her research, but deliberately altered the formulas to reduce manufacturing costs. The resulting medications were less effective and potentially dangerous. Children with rare diseases had received substandard treatments, while Tavian and his co-conspirators pocketed the profits. Dr. Kask agreed to testify, despite the obvious personal risk. I became a scientist to help people, she said. If my testimony can stop this from happening again, it's worth any danger. Her courage inspired me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Through my attorney, I arranged a private meeting with Tavian at the detention facility. He appeared in standard prison clothing, his designer suits replaced by institutional monotony, but his eyes still held that calculating intelligence. "This is unexpected," he said as he sat across from me. The new hero coming to gloat. "I'm here to offer you a deal," I replied calmly. "Complete cooperation in exchange for certain considerations." Curiosity flickered across his face. "I'm listening." I placed a folder on the table. "We've traced additional accounts in Belize containing approximately $2.8 million. Accounts the authorities don't yet know about." His fingers twitched slightly, but his expression remained neutral. "We've also located the research Dr. Kask mentioned, the work that was stolen and corrupted. She's prepared to testify about the threats she received." His jaw tensed. "What exactly do you want, Ephraim?" "Complete cooperation. Names of everyone involved, regardless of position or influence. Details of every falsified trial, every bribed regulator, every patient put at risk." He leaned back, studying me. "And what do I get in return?" "You keep those accounts in Belize. Your family retains certain assets. And most importantly," I met his gaze directly, "you get the knowledge that you finally did one right thing in your miserable career." "Why would you offer me anything?" he asked suspiciously. "You won." I stood, gathering my materials. "This isn't about winning, Tavian. It's about justice." Rian recovered from his injuries and was promoted to Chief Information Security Officer. His first priority was analyzing server logs to trace exactly how the network had operated. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "Orchestrated remote access sessions that correspond exactly with Tavian's business trips." The timestamps were damning. Every fraudulent transaction coincided with Tavian's travel schedule, creating false alibis while he remotely accessed our systems. "Here's the smoking gun," Rian continued, highlighting a specific entry. "This shell company payment was processed at 2:14 a.m. on March 15th. Tavian claimed he was on a red-eye flight to Berlin, but the server logs show his credentials accessing the system from our Lisbon office. We had irrefutable proof that Tavian had been physically present for every major fraudulent transaction while maintaining public alibis. The evidence was so comprehensive that his attorneys were already discussing plea bargains. But I wanted more than Tavian's conviction. The network extended across multiple countries and companies. "Can you trace access patterns for other executives?" I asked. Rian nodded grimly. "Already working on it. The patterns are consistent across 3 pharmaceutical companies. Same shell accounts, same timing, same remote access signatures. The conspiracy was even larger than we'd initially suspected. Tavian was just one node in a sophisticated international fraud network that had been operating for years. Working with Dahlia's team and international investigators, we mapped the complete financial network. Shell companies in 4 countries, bribed regulators in 3 jurisdictions, and corrupted research at dozens of laboratories. The scope was breathtaking. The offshore law firm was the central hub, Dahlia explained during a video call from Cape Town. Every fraudulent transaction passed through their accounts before being distributed to individual conspirators. Regulators in Estonia, Poland, and Portugal began coordinating investigations. The evidence we'd gathered provided roadmaps for simultaneous raids across 3 countries. But there was one final player we couldn't touch through normal channels. The last shell account led to a charitable foundation run by Senator Maria Campos, a powerful political figure with connections throughout the European pharmaceutical regulatory system. She's protected by parliamentary immunity, my lawyer warned. We need overwhelming evidence to even get an investigation started. That's when I decided to go public with everything. Not just leaks to friendly journalists, but a comprehensive press conference with documents, recordings, and testimony from victims like Dr. Kask. If the legal system couldn't reach Senator Campos immediately, public pressure and media scrutiny would make her position untenable. The press conference was scheduled for the following week. I spent days preparing, knowing this would be my one chance to expose the entire network before they could regroup and protect themselves. The press conference drew international media attention. I stood behind a podium in Lisbon, facing dozens of cameras and reporters from across Europe. Behind me, screens displayed organizational charts showing the connections between shell companies, bribed officials, and stolen research. Ladies and gentlemen, what began as a personal betrayal has revealed systematic corruption affecting patients across 3 countries. I began. Today, I'm releasing evidence of a pharmaceutical fraud network that has stolen millions from shareholders while providing ineffective treatments to vulnerable patients. The room was silent as I detailed the conspiracy. Tavian's role, the offshore accounts, the corrupted research, the bribed regulators. Dr. Kask appeared via video link to describe how her life-saving research had been stolen and perverted. Children with rare diseases received substandard medications while these criminals pocketed the profits, she said, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion. Then I played the recordings. Tavian's voice, captured during our prison meeting, describing how the network operated. Board members discussing bribes. Regulators coordinating cover-ups. As the recordings played, I watched reporters frantically taking notes, already planning their headlines. My phone buzzed with a text message. The sender was listed as unknown, but I recognized the syntax immediately. "You manipulated me," it read. Tavian had realized that our prison meeting was being recorded, that I'd never intended to protect his Belize accounts. The public was starting to understand the scope of the manipulation these criminals had perpetrated. Within hours of the press conference, Tavian's lawyer contacted me requesting an emergency meeting. We met in a secure conference room at my attorney's office. "My client is prepared to provide complete cooperation," the lawyer began. In exchange, he requests protection for one asset, accounts in Belize worth approximately $2 million. I leaned forward, appearing to consider the offer. That's a significant amount. It represents his family's only protection if other network members retaliate, the lawyer continued. Mr. Moreau understands the gravity of his situation, but he has legitimate concerns about his safety. What they didn't know was that I was recording this conversation, just as I'd recorded the prison meeting. If your client provides complete cooperation, names, documents, testimony against all co-conspirators, I'm willing to discuss asset protection. The lawyer nodded eagerly. He's prepared to detail the entire network. Bribed officials, falsified research, corrupted clinical trials. Everything. Over the next 2 hours, Tavian's lawyer outlined the complete conspiracy. Names I'd only suspected were confirmed. Regulatory corruption I'd theorized was documented. The network was even more extensive than our investigation had revealed. "We'll need written testimony," I said finally. "Complete financial records." and your client's willingness to testify publicly at congressional hearings. They agreed to everything. What they didn't realize was that there had never been any accounts in Belize. That was a test to see if Tavian was motivated by genuine remorse or continued greed. He'd failed the test spectacularly. The recordings from Tavian's cooperation meetings were even more damaging than I'd hoped. His voice, desperate and calculating, detailed exactly how the network operated. We rotated board members every 18 months to avoid detection. Regulatory bribes were disguised as consulting fees. Research theft was coordinated through the law firm to maintain deniability. But the most devastating revelation came when he described the human cost. We knew the modified treatments were less effective, but manufacturing costs were 60% lower. The profit margins were incredible. I leaked carefully edited portions to Dahlia's newsroom. Within hours, the clips went viral across social media. #PharmaScandal was trending in 12 countries. Public outrage reached a fever pitch as people realized that their medications might have been deliberately weakened for profit. Stock prices for implicated companies collapsed. Arenova's share price fell 78% in a single day as investors fled. But the other companies in the network suffered even worse losses. The European Medicines Agency announced emergency reviews of all approvals processed through the corrupted regulatory channels. Thousands of medications would need independent verification before remaining on the market. The industry was facing its worst crisis in decades, and we were just getting started. Senator Campos announced her resignation from the charitable foundation, claiming she had been deceived by criminal associates. But her political career was effectively over. Regulatory agencies launched coordinated raids across 3 countries simultaneously. In Lisbon, police searched Arenova's headquarters and 5 executives' homes. In Tallinn, investigators seized Dr. Kask's stolen research and arrested 2 laboratory directors. In Warsaw, anti-corruption units raided the Pharmaceutical Regulatory Office and arrested 4 senior officials. The evidence we provided served as roadmaps for each operation. Within 48 hours, 17 people were in custody across 3 countries. Each arrest led to additional evidence and more arrests. The network was collapsing faster than anyone had anticipated. Arenova's stock price became worthless as trading was suspended. The company faced bankruptcy, massive lawsuits from deceived patients, and criminal liability that could result in corporate dissolution. But I wasn't interested in destroying the company. I wanted to rebuild it properly. Working with Henrik and the remaining honest board members, we developed a comprehensive restructuring plan. New leadership, independent oversight, transparent research protocols, and a victim compensation fund for patients who'd received corrupted medications. The plan required approval from regulators, courts, and creditors. But it offered a path forward that prioritized patient safety over profit margins. Other implicated companies weren't as fortunate. Without leadership willing to acknowledge wrongdoing and implement reforms, they faced complete dissolution. 3 pharmaceutical companies with combined annual revenues exceeding $2 billion simply ceased to exist. Their assets were liquidated to compensate victims and fund independent research into the medications they'd corrupted. 6 months after my initial arrest, I stood in a congressional hearing room as Tavian testified under oath. He looked older, grayer, defeated. His voice was steady as he detailed the complete network operation for international prosecutors and medical regulatory committees. The network operated across pharmaceutical companies in Portugal, Estonia, and Poland, he testified. We coordinated through an offshore law firm to hide bribes, steal research, and corrupt clinical trials. Approximately 47 medications currently on the market were approved through fraudulent processes. His testimony led to 23 additional arrests, including 2 members of parliament and a European Medicines Agency director. The pharmaceutical industry faced the most comprehensive investigation in its history. But Tavian's cooperation came at a price I was willing to pay. His sentence was reduced from 25 years to 12 years in exchange for testimony that dismantled the entire network. Some critics argued that he deserved harsher punishment, but I was focused on systematic change rather than individual vengeance. The hearings resulted in new international protocols for pharmaceutical regulation. Independent research verification, transparent clinical trials, and international cooperation to prevent corruption. Dr. Kask was appointed to head a new European Pharmaceutical Research Integrity Commission with funding to develop the treatments her stolen work had promised. I declined offers to return as Arenova's CEO. Instead, I accepted an appointment to the new International Pharmaceutical Oversight Board, with authority to investigate suspected fraud across multiple countries. 16 months after that horrible morning in the Lisbon boardroom, I sat in a different hearing room watching the final phase of the investigation conclude. Tavian's complete cooperation had led to 89 arrests across 8 countries. The pharmaceutical fraud network that had stolen hundreds of millions while endangering patients was completely dismantled. For companies had been dissolved, their assets used to compensate victims. New regulations protected research integrity and clinical trial accuracy. Most importantly, patients could trust that their medications had been properly tested and approved. Dr. Kask's new research facility in Tallinn was developing treatments for rare childhood diseases, funded by recovered criminal assets. Rian had established new cybersecurity protocols that prevented the kind of internal fraud we'd uncovered. Dahlia's investigative reporting had won international journalism awards and inspired similar investigations in other industries. The personal cost had been enormous. Death threats, legal battles, months of stress and uncertainty. But standing in that hearing room, watching corrupt officials receive sentences and knowing that patients were now protected, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Justice. Not the dramatic, violent revenge of movies, but the slow, methodical, complete destruction of a criminal network through legal channels and public accountability. I'd turned Tavian's attempt to destroy me into something that would protect countless patients and restore integrity to an entire industry. That evening, I looked directly into the camera for my final interview. Justice isn't always immediate, I said. Sometimes it's a ledger that takes time to balance. But when you close the books correctly, the accounting is perfect. The story went viral one final time, inspiring other whistleblowers to come forward with evidence of corruption in their own industries.